Welcome to the Honest Healing Podcast, real talk for cycle breakers. I'm your host, Katie Delamon. If you're ready to speak up, set boundaries, heal your nervous system, and build better relationships, you're in the right place. Because you don't need to be perfect to heal. You just need to be honest. Let's go. Welcome to the very first episode of Honest Healing, named after my aunt who was murdered. In today's episode, I'm just going to be speaking about parts of my story. Now, if you know me personally, or if you follow me on social media, or if you've read my best-selling memoir, Trust the Flames, you probably already know most of my story. But if you're new here, welcome. And in my book, Trust the Flames, I start off talking about my mom who passed away at the tender age of 55 from cancer. She was only 53 when she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I was 26 years old when she passed away, living in New York at the time, and only 24 when she was diagnosed. Now, I'm not going to go into the colorful relationship that we had, but I'm going to save that for a whole episode itself, the mother wound, or what I like to call mama trauma. Now, whenever I talk about trauma or family dysfunction, I want you to know that this is not about shame, blame, revenge. This is about naming it to tame it. It's offering it a chance to heal, because we can only heal what is seen, heard, and validated. And that's exactly what talking about it does. And secrets don't keep us safe, they keep us stuck. This is gonna be the highlight of today's episode, the silence, secrets, and shame that I was born into. So I'm going to bring you all the way back to the beginning of my birth. I was born on March 1st, 1986 in Belleville, New Jersey at 6:27 in the morning, which makes me a sun and rising Pisces and a moon in Scorpio. If you know, you know. Now, I was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. This is not special and this is not uncommon, but to me, this speaks volume. This is a metaphor for what I was born into, the silence, the secrets, and the shame. My throat chakra, speaking, was literally cut off. I was blue like a Smurf. I had no oxygen. I couldn't breathe. And my throat chakra was literally cut off. And I know that this was my karmas and dharmas, what I was put into this world to do, to heal not only my throat chakra, but to show other people that they can too, that you can speak your truth, you can ask for what you need, and you are allowed to say how you feel, to have agency and autonomy over your own body, and to be honest. That's what a clear, regulated throat chakra is. It's about being honest. Because it's not about perfection, it's about honesty. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. This is like the 10 millionth time I'm recording this podcast. I spent about 3 or 4 hours yesterday, deleted every video because I didn't like how I sounded. I didn't like the stories I was telling. I didn't like what I said, how I said. And I noticed that I was talking quite fast and I kept gasping for air. So I'm on day 2 of recording and I am going to finish it today. I've decided whether I love it or not. I'm going to put it out there because it's not going to be perfect, but I'm going to be honest. And this is what I want to share with the world and to hopefully help you embrace in your life. More honesty, more truth, more speaking up. And sometimes, a lot of the times, it means listening more instead of talking. When I say speaking up for yourself, it doesn't necessarily mean more talking. It could be less talking, more listening, but listening to what you want and truly feel, and when you're being honest with yourself. Now, going back to my birth trauma, I was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck, and I was also born on my exact due date. So I read that only 4 to 5% of the percentage of the world's population is born on their due date. Now, to me, this is also another significant sign that maybe this is the reason why my love language is quality time and why I'm so punctual. But it also means for me why I feel so clear about what I am put on this planet to do and help people with. So that's how I was born. And I was also, this is the big part of my birth. I was a child born out of infidelity. My biological father was the man who my mom was having an affair with when I was little. Now, I actually talk about him in my book. We're going to call him Jerry. That's what I name him in my book. And I'm going to read out loud on page 50 of my book where I talk about him. I said, I can't recall much of my childhood, but the story goes that my mom started hanging out with a family friend named Jerry before I was born. She was drinking heavily on the weekends, and Jerry was a drinking buddy who turned into more. What I remember about Jerry comes in snapshots. Dark haired, smeared glasses, thick arms covered in a sheen of rough hair. I can still picture his tiny one bedroom basement floor apartment with no kitchen across the street from the park. He had a red light in his bathroom and an old popcorn tin full of candy called the candy can. Whenever he saw me, he'd always sing my name like a song. Katie, she's a lady. I remember feeling creeped out before I even knew what being creeped out meant. Now, that's my biological father, but when I wrote this book years ago, I didn't know that. Now I'm going to go into that story, but my book too will be talking more about this whole situation. But going back to being a child born out of infidelity, and my mom, I didn't mention this, my mom kept this secret from me and from the man who raised me as my father my entire life. So I was 26 years old when she passed. That means for 26 years, she kept not only this, but a lot of other things secret. Now, secrets, again, don't keep us safe. They keep us stuck. Can you imagine what that does to your body physically, mentally, and emotionally, keeping a secret like that? Now, I know some people are going to say, oh, well, she gaslit my father, which she did, which is a narcissistic trait and tendency. And most narcissistic people, or who have those traits, don't feel like what they do is wrong. But I know behind every narcissist is a very insecure, very hurt, scared, fearful little wounded girl or boy, child. I know that. And I know that my mom was just so scared of losing me and losing my father if she actually exposed this truth because there was so much shame attached to it. So I know I am here to help people shatter shame and to speak out loud because it does heal. Now, I obviously don't remember being born. I had no clue. Well, I think I knew that my dad was not the man who raised me, but my earliest memories of realizing the truth in my family wasn't being told came about the age of 10. So I do remember my mom having affairs, not just one, and it not feeling quote unquote like normal, but I didn't know any different. But by the time I was 10, I started to piece more together and I started to listen and overhear the arguments that were going on. And I investigated a lot. I was a nosy kid. I asked a lot of questions. I snooped into things I wasn't allowed to. And I found out that back in 1982, Mother's Day, so this 4 years before I was born, my mom's sister was murdered. And my mom adopted her son and raised him obviously as our brother. We didn't know any different, and he's our brother. But he didn't even know. This was one of the first secrets that they decided to keep from everybody. They never talked about my aunt, but they did talk about my grandmother having 9 kids, but we knew there was only 8 living. But nobody talked about her. Nobody told my brother or us as the siblings. They just decided it was best not to tell anybody. And I understand that that was the mentality back then, but he found out around 14 or 15. And I pieced it together as well. I ended up finding my aunt's death certificate in the closet under a bunch of papers I shouldn't have been into. But this aunt, her name is Kathy, Kathy, I was also named after her. My name is Kathleen, Kathlyn. But again, this was never told to me. This was never talked about. And then when I was 10 years old, my mom physically left my dad for somebody else. Now, this guy who she left my dad for, I forget who I named him in my book, but this guy was actually my mom's sister who passed away, Kathy, her husband at the time of her death. So she left my father for her dead sister's husband. Let that land. Now, not only was that big, and that was so much confusion to think about. And again, we didn't live in a household where we talked about these things. I didn't even talk to my siblings about these things. Never mind talking about a friend at school about these things or an adult to make sense of it. But, anyways, that happened. Even the move to West Virginia, she moved me and three of my other siblings. The oldest, my sister Deanne, and she stayed in New Jersey to go to college. So the other four of us moved to West Virginia in a trailer with my mom and her new boyfriend. Now, this was also kept a secret of the move. My dad didn't even know we were moving until the night before she started packing boxes. And I remember that day clearly when we moved. Even for us, it was traumatic because, again, it was a big shock and it wasn't talked about and we didn't have any sort of, I don't want to say preparation, but it was just this thing that we were doing and we just had to accept it. And I remember being so upset. I was crying the entire way there. I remember my dad was just in freeze, shutdown mode, sitting on the couch. Of course, he wasn't helping us. He was just like completely shocked. I don't think he could move and was so upset. And yeah, she moved us all down there. Now, this was just quite typical. Like everything was hush hushed, everything was assumed, everything was minimized. But I'm here to tell you, as a grown adult going through these things, kids know everything. Kids might not have the language for things, but we feel everything. We are so much more intuitive than the adults give us credit for. And our nervous systems adapt to our caregivers and our environments around us. So, because I had a lot of this uncertainty around me all the time, I grew up very aware, paying attention all the time. This is why I think I'm kind of obsessed with mindfulness because as a child with so much uncertainty, I was always scanning for danger, which is also a common trait is hypervigilance, which I had for many years, where you think that you're being self-aware, but what you're really being is just super aware and you're actually just in a state of like anxiety instead of being grounded and regulated, but just being aware. Anyways, I'm not going to go too much into the nervous system in this episode. This is just to give you a background of my story, why I'm so passionate about what I'm doing, and why I have so much lived experience in this. So, to go back to my story of being a child of infidelity, when I was 18 years old, somebody actually came to me and said, Katie, I do not think that the man who raised you is your father. I think it is the man who our mother was having an affair with when I was little. And I said, absolutely no way. I have my dad's blue eyes because my dad is 100% Polish and he has blue eyes, and I'm the only one with blue eyes. And I actually felt I'm the special one. I got his blue eyes. There is no way I am this other guy's daughter because that other guy had like brown or black eyes, and my mom didn't have blue eyes. So there's no way I could have blue eyes. Like that was what I basically convinced myself. I never, ever spoke about it ever again to the person who told me. I never said anything to my mom. I had a whole another almost 10 years of her being alive that I could have had a conversation with her and we could have cleared this up a long time ago, but I shoved it down. And I'm going to do a whole episode on trauma and memory and how your body is always protecting you, especially when really, really overwhelming things happen, or maybe when you find out overwhelming things. So, What my body did was said that piece of information, that's probably true, but that is way too much to handle right now. So we are just going to shove that down into your subconscious memory for you to never think about again. But what the mind forgets, the body remembers. And so in my 20s, even in my teens, I had anxiety. I probably, maybe it was depression. I slept a lot. I would literally go home at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, go to bed pretty much at 3 or 4, and not wake up until school started the next day. And this is no joke. I am the world's greatest sleeper. I would sleep for 18 hours, wake up and be exhausted and go back to bed. Every Saturday on the weekends, I was sleeping until 5 or 6 p.m. And this is no joke. And I did not stay up late. I was not a teenager and I still, even in my 20s and now, I am not a late sleeper, but I can sleep a lot. And I don't know if that goes back to some depression, but definitely anxiety, chronic fatigue. I had IBS for 30 plus years and I just thought it was normal. I, made a lot of very unhealthy and toxic choices. I was in a lot of toxic relationships. I experimented with a lot of things. I said, I was always chasing the next dopamine hit. So whatever I can get that from. But that is how your body speaks to you when things are not okay, is through your choices and through your symptoms. I always say pain is pay attention inward now. Whatever is physically showing up in your bottoms through symptoms, that has some connection to your emotions. Now, that is how I know that I had so much unresolved trauma and repressed emotions because my body was screaming it in my 20s. I didn't start to really go down the healing process until I was in my 30s. Now, when I was 18, I shoved that information down. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't even tell my husband. He had no idea that that was even a possibility. Now, I will say, when I was at meditation retreats, I've done a few 10-day silent meditation retreats. It actually has come up. And I've meditated on the idea of what if the man who raised me was not my biological father. I've meditated on it multiple times. I thought about how I would feel, what my reaction would be. And so at 38 years old, my mother-in-law asked us what we wanted for Christmas. And I said, I've always wanted to do ancestry.com. So she bought us a kit. Me and Kenny sent it away to Ireland. You waited 6 weeks and it was a Monday morning. I remember it clear as day. I sat down on my meditation cushion, and because I'm like every other person in this world, I get easily distracted. And I put my headphones in, and instead of hitting the meditation frequencies that I listen to, I was like, let me just check my email first. Of course, distractions, instead of doing what I really sat down to do. Check my email. Oh, ancestry.com. I got my results back. Yes. Click on it. I go to the page where, first of all, it says what your background is. And I see English, French, German, Scottish, Irish, and 2% Jewish. And the Jewish part was highlighted around Poland and the Eastern European. Now, for me, I didn't put it together there. My father, the man who raised me, is 100% Polish. And at first I was like, oh, maybe they lied to him. Maybe he doesn't know that he's not Polish because he's never done Ancestry. I convinced myself. I just didn't think of it. And then I went to my direct matches and this name popped up. I only had 3 matches. One was my cousin who I knew. She was my mom's sister's daughter. Knew her, saw her face, knew her name. I'm like, yep, I know her. Then there were 2 other names that said half brother or uncle because I share 20% of my DNA with. And then I think it was 9 or 10% DNA. They had the same last name. And I was like, I don't know these people. Are these on my dad's side? How do I not know this last name? But the man who I had 19% of my DNA with, his first name, I'm going to use a code name, is Jerry. It was the same name as the guy who my mom had the affair with. I didn't know his last name. All I knew was his first name, Jerry. So what I did, I called my brother immediately because I knew he would know the name. And I called him. I didn't even call my husband first because I was like, I don't know I kind of know what's going on right now, but I don't, and I need confirmation. So I called my brother all the way in the US. Thankfully, he answered at that time. And I just asked him, what was Jerry's last name? I didn't even say hello. I didn't even say why I was asking anything. I just said, what was Jerry's last name? And he said the last name, and it was that last name. And I knew it. And I said, Jerry's my biological father. And he goes, yeah, I know. He's like, I put it together when I was little. And nobody told him, but he pieced it together as a child. Now, this is also my brother who was adopted and nobody told him. So I know children who we have these we knowings. We know things even though we're not told things and we don't have the emotional awareness to put things together, but children know everything. So I'm 38 years old. I'm sitting on my meditation cushion at 6 in the morning, right before, I mean, it's the first week of December because it was a Christmas gift. And I knew that I had to tell my father. Or the man who raised me. There was no way in hell I was ever going to keep this from him. And I knew in my head, he's alive. There's obviously a reason why I'm meant to talk to him. And I found out that my biological father had passed away a year before my mom. So I knew right then and there, I'm not upset that I didn't speak with my mom or my biological father because that wasn't my plan. I know that like things happen for you, not to you. But the man who raised me was still alive. So I knew that I had to have that conversation with him. So I started to call a lot of family and just see who knew, what they knew, if anybody talked to them, if they thought that my dad knew. And I got a lot of pushback, a lot of pushback. Everybody was saying, I don't think you should tell him. This is going to kill him. This is going to break his heart. If it was me, I wouldn't say anything. I had some people say to me, I think one person say you're being completely selfish. This is your truth, not his truth. All you're thinking about is yourself. You're going to fly all the way over there, drop this on him, and then fly back to Australia. Can't believe you're doing this. You're not thinking about him and his health. This was your mother's mistake, not his mistake. And that was a lot of pressure on me because I knew in my heart, in my gut, that I was having this conversation, whether people agreed with it or not. And the fact that basically none of my family, as much as they said we support your decision, none of them agreed with me wanting to have this conversation. They all thought it was best to just keep it secret, keep quiet, don't say anything because there was some reason why, if he did know, he wasn't saying anything to me. And so their fear, which is disguised as love, love doesn't fear. Love knows that you can talk about anything and still be okay. But this is the thing with dysfunctional family patterns and behavior and conditioning. We grow up thinking that when we talk about things, it actually makes it worse because people explode, people manipulate, people shut down, and people aren't emotionally mature. So we learn that, well, if I speak up, I'm actually going to get in trouble. I'm going to upset somebody, and I'm actually going to make things worse. That's fear. Dysfunctional dynamics is completely run by fear. And fear is just false evidence appearing real. Love, emotional awareness, emotional intelligence, emotional maturity knows that they are not afraid of pain, they are afraid of avoidance. The truth doesn't ever hurt, it sets you free. It might not feel nice. The truth might be activating, absolutely. But once you get over that activation and you regulate and come back to your body, everybody prefers the truth, whether they want to admit it or not. The truth will always set any relationship free. And When I flew over to America, I had about 6 or 7 months talking to my dad on the phone, feeling so awkward and so weird because I just wanted to say something, but I knew I wanted to do it in person and I waited. So I booked the flight from May, which is about like 6 weeks ago. I went over to the US. I planned on doing it on Sunday on Mother's Day. I kind of wanted this full circle moment from my aunt's death of 1982 on Mother's Day. And I was going to, bring this out on Mother's Day. But I couldn't hold it in anymore. I flew to West Virginia to see my dad on Saturday. And I landed in the afternoon and I was texting with my sisters because I had just seen them for a few days. And I was like, I just can't hold it in. Like, I need to say something. And they're like, just say it when you feel most comfortable. Like, don't overthink it. And I let it come out. And I asked him, did you know? And he immediately said he knew. He knew, but my mother denied it. So I didn't know this, of course. I knew that my father knew, because to me, first of all, these things. And second of all, he was not a dum dum who didn't know what was going on in the relationship. He was very well aware. But unfortunately, my mom gaslit him and denied it. So somebody had written my dad a typed letter, an anonymous typed letter. This is something I never knew about. I don't think anybody knew about because my dad actually never told anybody but one person. And they typed a letter to him saying, Katie is not your daughter, it's Jerry's. And he approached my mom multiple times and he said she would deny it. She said they're liars. Who are you going to believe, me or them? She would get upset. She would deflect. She would leave for a few days. So he ended up just never bringing it up again because she just kept denying it. And all he wanted to know was the truth. So when I actually said I did this ancestry test and this is what I found out, he said, this is a relief, such a relief. He said to me, I've wanted to tell you hundreds of times, but I just couldn't get the words out. I didn't know how to tell you. He said he was going to put it in the will because he did not want me to not know, but he just didn't know how to say it. And so my courage of speaking my truth not only set me free, but it set him free of all these years of being gaslit at so many points in his life. He started to think that he was the crazy one, that he was making it up, and that if he said anything, well, what if Katie gets so mad at me? And so again, this is just what dysfunction thrives on is silence, secrets, shame, and fear. But when you're emotionally intelligent and mature, you don't fear pain. You don't fear getting upset. What you fear is avoiding the truth. And I'm here to tell you, as someone who was not born into a family where we spoke about things and we were honest and we, really used our throat chakras. I am here as someone who is healed and is healing. It's never done. The throat chakra and speaking up for yourself and finding, I don't want to say the right words because there's never the most perfect words, but finding ways to express yourself more authentically so you feel so good about it that there's no such thing as regrets or bad or coulda, woulda, shouldas. You are grounded, you are present, you are regulated, as we say in the nervous system world. You're connected to your body and you speak honestly, authentically. This is how we heal. Now, I do want to add one little woo woo moment. I'm going to call them my woo woo moments because I'm a very spiritual person and I do want to drip feed some spirituality into these podcast episodes because it's something I'm passionate about. It's actually my number one value in this world is my spirituality. I connect with something bigger, higher, and greater every single day, and I have a lot of rituals and I use signs as a way to connect. And back in 2020, voted in the US election. So I'm living in Australia right now. I will eventually talk about how I met my Australian husband and what brought us to Brisbane, Australia. But back in 2020, I voted in the US election, and you get an absentee ballot, and it gets sent to you physically in the mail. And when I opened it up, I looked down at the poll clerks. So on the poll, it's obviously all blank, but at the bottom it has to have a signature of the poll clerk. And it was the name of my aunt, Kathy White. Kathy, even spelled with a K. And I know White is a very common last name, but what are the odds of that? Like, this is again another little just sign from the universe saying you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, with exactly who you're supposed to be doing it with. You are not behind. You are divinely guided. And I'm just going to show you a picture for anybody who's watching the actual photo. So Kathy White, if you can see that, and it's actually a lot like my mom's handwriting as well. But yep, take that for some woo woo. Now, next episode, I am going to talk about my healing journey. So I asked my Instagram audience if they had any questions, and somebody asked me how I got started on my healing journey. They asked me what I do on my healing journey and how do I handle old pain that comes up that's overwhelming. So next episode, I'm going to go a little bit more about my actual healing journey. And if you do want anything covered or talked about, please send me your questions and send me your feedback. Thanks so much. Till next time. If this story resonated with you and you want to know more about my story, pick up my best-selling memoir, Trust the Flames. You can buy it anywhere they sell books. You can also check it out on my website, www.katiedelimon.com. And you can also follow me on TikTok, but really I'm more active on Instagram. All my social media handles are the same, Katie, Katie, Delimon, Delimon.